Right, then Nick Krauser here with another Womanizers Bible podcast. Right, I'm sitting in a Costa behind New Yorker in Prague right now. Just got a 3 nights trip in Prague before I head over to Serbia. Um, it's been quite good here, but it is absolutely like roaring hot. It's like, what time is it? It's 2 p.m. and it's like too hot to go outside. I'm like dressed for summer and it's just too hot. So anyway, I thought this might be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about vibe protection. Now, the reason I'm picking vibe protection for this podcast is that has been my major preoccupation in 2015. I'm at a point where I think like my technique's fine. There's not really much profit to be had trying to micromanage my technique. The big thing is monitoring my vibe, and particularly monitoring how much I actually want to do day game. Because I do want to do it, but I've found that my compulsion and obsession for it is significantly diminished this year. I think I pretty much satisfied all my goals in 2014. So now I've been going through a big period of thinking like, what do I really want from day game on an ongoing basis? Now that I'm basically have achieved enough from it to be like satisfied. So the main thing I was thinking about this is day game has to be fun. I have to enjoy it. Now that the compulsion or the ego or the relentless notch count hyena is maybe not gone, but like it's no longer in the foreground. I'm actually only doing day game now when I feel like it. And I think there's actually some learning points to be had from that. So, to talk about vibe protection, let's get a bit of theory first. So, vibe, it's quite a nebulous concept. It's quite difficult to explain. I think it's best described as enthusiasm plus interest. Is that you're enthusiastic for life, enthusiastic for the girl, enthusiastic for what's going on right now, and you're also interested in who she is, like where you are, like what's going on, right? Like there's an enjoyment of the process involved in good vibe. So let's get a little bit of background on what you feel in day game over the medium to long term and how it impacts your vibe, right? So the first thing to get is you're aboard a emotional roller coaster. Day game is extremely volatile for your nerves, your emotions. Get increased volatility when you do day game. It's a little bit like imagine you become a day trader, you know, or like a currency options trader or something like that. You might go from a normal job where you just sit tapping away on Excel and you have regular meetings and nothing really matters on an hour-to-hour basis, to suddenly you have like a significant portion of your livelihood, like your capital, wrapped up on the like literally like second by second moments of the stock market sometimes, right? So that naturally puts you aboard a kind of emotional high and emotional low ride, which, if you're not used to it, is very unsettling. But it's also very addictive, right? There's a kind of thrill-seeking, adrenaline junkie thing going on there as well. So one thing you're going to expect when you do day game is your vibe is going to hit more extreme highs and more extreme lows than you might be used to, and it's going to do that in shorter time periods. You know, there's going to be a lot of spikes in both directions. So be ready for that. That's normal, right? There's, you know, like you don't get anyone really beginner intermediate day game who has like complete zen state. Even the guys who are like really good at it, the zen state's just a outside facade. It's not real. So this is the roller coaster. Number two is day game is a Sisyphean task. Right? There's the old, I think it's a Greek myth about a guy called Sisyphus who was condemned by the gods that he had to roll a boulder, like push a boulder up a mountain every morning, and it would get to the top and it would just roll back down the other side, and then he'd have to, you know, do it again over and over again. And the myth is basically how life is struggle, that no matter how much you achieve, you like reset to zero the next day. You know, like your hunger's back to zero, your thirst is back to zero, and you've just got to keep doing it. Life is work, life is struggle. There is no extended period where you simply sit on top of the mountain having achieved everything. Um, Now, for a long time when I was doing game, I kind of thought that the Sisyphean nature of pushing the boulder uphill, you know, grinding it out, like the day game grind on the streets, I used to think that was like some kind of temporary learning phase, and that there would be some point in the indefinable future where I would suddenly have day game, and it would become easy and I wouldn't have to grind anymore. Now, it's certainly become easier. There's no question about that. I have to do a lot less sets to get laid. I get laid with hotter girls than I used to. The actual experience of talking to them's better. I get more positive responses. There's no question day games become easier. But every day you still have to push the boulder up the hill. So I just came to Prague on Friday night, and I'm talking now on Sunday. So Friday night my flight arrived, I think it was 6 p.m. I got into Prague airport. I got the bus into centre Prague, went off and met my apartment manager at 7 p.m. Checked in, charged my phone, and at 7:30 I thought, right, I got to go out. Now initially I was just going out to put some credit on my phone down at the mall before the shop shut at 8. But I put some credit on my phone, and immediately some girl, not particularly hot, she flashed me an IOI. I thought, right, let's start, right? So I gave that boulder the first push, right? I was starting this holiday. I do have some leads in Prague, like existing leads. I do have some girls here, but it's all a bit flaky, and I'm only here 3 nights, right? And a bunch of the girls I do have here are like elsewhere on holiday. So I was basically at this point where I put down my rucksack at 7:30 in my apartment, and I have to go out and make it all happen. Right, and I've been doing day game. God, it must be like going on 6 years now. Let's see, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, it's about 6 years. I've been doing day game about 6 years. Right, I'm pretty good at it. And I still have this, right? I still have this thing where I arrive in my case, a foreign city, and my address book's empty, my phone's not buzzing. I have to go out and make it happen, right? So that's never going to go away. If you want to get laid younger, hotter, tighter on this path, get used to the fact that if you want to get laid, you've got to push that boulder up the hill. And then you do get laid, or you get your near miss or whatever, the boulder falls all the way back down and you have to start again. That's just the reality of day game. Okay, point number 3. You have to be self-starting. So what I mean by this is life is something you go out and take. I believe one person says it's grabbing life by the horns, right? So you have to go out and make things happen. Right? I mean, that's your biological role as a man, but particularly if you want to do day game, right? You can't rely on this shitty kind of passive social circle thing or work thing or online thing. That's not going to get you the results. One of the reasons day game is so effective for getting the good hot girls is you're displaying so much proactivity and self-starting by the very fact of what you're doing. Now, it's an attractive masculine trait. But if you just sit around waiting for things to happen, then they are not going to happen. I mean, that's like life advice anyway, but it's day game advice particularly. You always have to go out and make things happen. You have to make that decision, right? I'm going to put my fucking shoes on, my coat on, I'm going to charge my phone, I'm going to go out and I'm going to hit on some woman. That never goes away, right? Like, I mean, the community's full of various meta avoidance weasels on trying to tell you how you can get girls passively, like you build up a certain lifestyle, or you build up certain like Tinder hacks or blah, blah, blah. It's all bullshit. You have to go out and make it happen, right? Okay, point 4, it is all on you. Okay, now independence, self-determination are very powerful, attractive masculine traits. And in your day game journey, you're going to need them, and you are going to strengthen these traits as you do more day game. Now, nobody else is accountable for your success with women. Not your mum, not your dad, not your PUA coach, not like some dude whose podcast you're listening to right now. Nobody is responsible, right? There's no saying in business. You can delegate work, but you can't delegate responsibility. Now, the responsibility for you getting laid is on you. And you can never get around that, right? I mean, when you're feeling a bit down, you'll want to blame other things, God, feminism this, or social forces that, or God, I'm not tall enough, or I'm not good looking enough, or God, I've been ill all day, whatever, right? But and any one of these might be a reasonable excuse in the short term. But over the medium to long term, it's all on you, and you have to carry that weight on your shoulders. Right? So if you naturally shirk responsibility, you're going to have to deal with that. So what that means is you might say, look at the game advice out there. So for example, in my world, that's the London day game model. You might read one of my books, say Mastery, or you might watch the video Overkill, or you might watch some of the other guys' materials, right? There's a lot of good material out there. But you can't get around the fact that what we do when we produce this material is we tell you what works for us. Right? Like as much as we try to make it generalizable and like fit many guys' experiences, ultimately it's based on evidence of our own sets, which were determined by our own personalities and our own behaviors and habits. So it's never going to be truly one size fits all. It's not going to be like a cookie cutter. I mean, part of the problem with daygame right now is there's a lot of cookie cutter guys, normally beginners, who are just saying the same words as everybody, doing exactly the same things as everybody. And that's kind of okay when you're just learning the ropes, you're training wheels, you're scaffolding. But there comes a point where you have to take control of your own self-reflection, your own analysis, and you have to start tweaking things for you, and that includes discarding certain pieces of advice that work for somebody else but don't work for you. So you have to find your own answer here. So what I've just done there, this little theoretical background, is I've listed 4 things: the roller coaster, the pushing the boulder up the mountain, the self-starting, and the all on you, which are kind of like long-term effects on your vibe. Is you having to deal, these are essentially 4 problems which can hurt your vibe, and how you deal with this is going to determine your success, right? If you can harness your mind's ability to control and manage and ride the roller coaster, the boulder, the self-starting, and the self-responsibility, and on an ongoing basis you can just handle that, then you will have success, right? And everything else just becomes technique. So that's all about you. That's what will affect your vibe over time. But also think of what it means for the girl. Is girls don't give a shit about any of this. It's like the girl isn't like, she's not your sister, she's not your mum, she doesn't get to see your life in all its detail. What the girl's doing is she's just walking down the street being pretty, right? And then this guy suddenly appears, like is inserted his presence, and she gives him the once over and makes a snap emotional judgment on whether she should stop and talk to you. And all of these things I've talked about kind of get funneled into that brief moment where she gives you the once over and she makes her emotional decision. So just as most people who eat sausages don't care how the sausages are made, how as men we just care for girls hot, we don't actually care what exercises she does in the gym or what she eats or what her beauty regime is, right? We just see the final product. We are the consumer of women's hotness, and we don't really care how they did it, right? Any more than we care how Apple makes the iPhone, right? We just care what it means for us when we use it. So she's going to feel your vibe the same way. She doesn't care that you've had to go through like maybe a multi-meltdown dramatic journey to reach the point where you now have a cool vibe. All she cares about is, do you have a cool vibe? Now that's great once you get it though. So that's like a little bit of theoretical background. So let's talk now about what you might call the learning phase of daygame for your vibe. Now I think there's a central tension in game, in that on the one hand you want more, right? You want younger, hotter, tighter, you want more girls, you want them faster, you want more notches per year, right? There's this kind of conveyor belt of industrial quantity hitting on girls, and it's very natural to just want more and more and more. So there's that tension which is very outcome based, very performance oriented. And then on the opposite side, you have the kind of whimsical nature, which is, but only when I feel like it, right? I want this to be fun. I don't really want to have to do the work when I don't feel like it. So over the course of your journey, I mean, everyone's going to be different for where they stand on this tension. But for me, what I found is early on, I was very much on the outcome performance based, right? I want more. I was very compulsive and obsessed. And as time passes, I become less and less interested in that and more interested in how I feel when I'm doing daygame. So basically, I'm willing to take less results in order to have more fun and more free time. Now, you'll be at different stages of your journey, the people listening to this. So during this kind of what you might call your learning phase, is you have compulsion, you have obsession, right? It's like, I'm going to get this area of my life handled. I'm really into daygame. I'm going to devour every bit of material I can get. I'm going to go out in the streets like as many times as I can. I'm going to open as many sets as I can, right? You're like really tempted to immerse yourself into it, right? Which I think is great. I think everyone should do that. especially at the beginning when you're so full of enthusiasm and hope, right? It's like channel that, harness it, and let that power you through your first 1,000 sets, right? Your first 3,000 sets. And but what you'll find when you talk to day gamers at this stage, like maybe your Wings or maybe some of the guys on YouTube you're watching, is you can just see the compulsion, right? You can see the compulsive personality, you can see the obsession in their eyes, how they talk about it, how they live, breathe, sleep day game. And unfortunately, it hurts your vibe a little, right? It makes you a bit weird. But the compensation is you get such a huge amount of sets in that you flip a lot of stones and you find more yes goals. Now, the thing going on with this kind of compulsion, obsession, immersion is what you're basically doing is you are using your forebrain, right? Your logical forebrain. You are using your specific, explicit mental discipline to brute force your body into getting out onto the streets and talking to girls, right? And this is why it's often nerve-wracking. It's often like severely emotionally troubling, right? It's why you'll often get like meltdowns. It's why you might go out like full of high state. You have like one bad set and then you spend like 2 hours like sitting by the river, like eating a load of Haribo or something, you know, like saying, fuck my luck, right? It's incredibly grueling because what you're basically doing is you've pitched your forebrain at war with your hindbrain. And it's your hindbrain that controls the emotions, and it's your forebrain that controls the behavior. So what you're basically doing is like brutalizing yourself in order to reach these compulsive, obsessive targets. Now, I was like that. Everyone I know who's good at day game was like that as well. So I'm in no way saying don't do this, right? I think you have to do it. It's a real test of self-discipline, which makes you feel a hell of a lot stronger. Just as you have to often use your forebrain when you're in the gym to push out those extra reps, you know? But just accept what it is. It is your forebrain overruling your hindbrain and your hindbrain rebelling. And this is just creating this toxic emotional cocktail of like meltdowns, dark long nights of the soul, super giddy highs, really depressing lows. You end up appearing kind of like bipolar. But it's this immersion which will absolutely ingrain you with all the muscle memory of the day game model and eventually build up the reference experiences to learn to love it. Now the other side of that tension about feeling great is you will get times when you just wake up and you feel awesome, right? You're just totally in the mood for day game. Or you might actually find in Day Game Night, where I have a chapter on this about how your vibe can be volatile over the course of one day game session. But you'll just get certain lulls in day game where you just can't be fucking bothered. You just want to go and hide in a cafe and like read a book or something. But you'll get other moments where you feel like you can open anything, right? Like the social barriers have all broken down. You're in state. You're completely in tune with the vibe in the street, right? You're in a kind of day game trance, and you're just very social, and you just want to hit on as many beautiful girls as you can, and you just feel awesome about it, right? There's no sense of dragging yourself, kicking and screaming into the set, right? It actually becomes a thing of joy. Now, what's going on here is your hindbrain is in control, and you're very whimsical normally when you do this, and your forebrain just isn't necessary, right? Your hindbrain temporarily is just bought the pitch. It's very happy to just go in and, you know, live the dream, follow your biological instincts. Now, obviously, that is like the Shangri-La, that is like the Nirvana of day game, and we just wish it was possible to actually bottle that and pull it out regularly, right? I'm sure you've had times where you're opening sets in this feeling where you think, God, I wish I felt like this all the time, right? Then day game would be so much fun. So what's optimal? Well, obviously, rather than increasing your forebrain control to brute force it over your hindbrain, I mean, that's successful, but it's not optimal. Really what you want to do is you want to work on the hindbrain, right? You want to improve your hindbrain so you can take off the burden from your forebrain, let it relax, and don't create these like internal schisms. Now, the thing to get with this is all things in your hindbrain are long-term projects. Right, forebrain, yeah, you can drill a different way to stand. You can watch a YouTube thing which recommends a particular little technical thing to do, and then you go out and you just do it, right? Forebrain things are pretty fast. Hindbrain moves slowly. It's like trying to correct an oil tanker from going the wrong way, right? Your hindbrain moves slow, so you have to accept that this is a long-term project, and you've just got to keep whittling away, just keep like chipping away at the statue until, you know, Michelangelo's David emerges from underneath. So let's talk about a few little maybe tips, you might say hacks, I suppose is a word I don't like, but a few little things to think about just to set you on the right way with this training your hindbrain to get better vibe. Right, I'm going to give you a couple of kind of axioms. Right, number one is you don't need to open as much as you think. Now I'm speaking to intermediates here, right? Beginners, yes you do. Yes, you do have to open. You probably have to open a hell of a lot more than you think, right? But I'm guessing most people listening to this podcast, we're talking about intermediates who want to like jump up to advanced, right? So the big thing is you don't need to open as much as you think, right? Like you don't want to get into this day game guilt kind of concealed scarcity where you're walking around and you feel like you must open every single hot girl you see. That, you know, you see a girl like in a group of like with a 5 like family, you know, with their grandparents and a fucking husband, and you think, oh yeah, like how do I get into that like mixed generation mixed set, you know? It's like, no, like you don't have to open every girl, right? There's many girls on the girl tree and you don't need every single one of them. Now, this is something I particularly used to struggle with, and every now and then it crops up again. But because I want more, I think this central tension between more versus feeling it is I want to fuck huge numbers of girls in industrial quantities, right? Like it's a bit of an ego thing, right? I don't really need that to satisfy my sex drive. It's just an ego thing. I want more. You know, I want younger, I want hotter, I want tighter, and I want as many as possible. Now the problem there is that is driving a scarcity. So it's kind of odd where what happens in day game is you become so abundant with your ability to generate leads and your ability to convert leads and the number of girls you have on your phone and the messages you get. Right? It sounds like abundance, and in a very simple way it is. It's incredibly abundant compared to the average guy. But what you're getting there is wanting more is creating scarcity. Right? You're like, no matter how abundant you get with day game, if your expectations of what you should get rise, you go from wanting to fuck 5 girls a year to fucking 1 a month, then you go to wanting to fuck 1 every 2 weeks, suddenly you're creating a schedule for yourself, right? And you're enforcing failure conditions onto yourself and making yourself feel scarce. Right? I'll give you an example of this. So this weekend hasn't been amazing, but it's been all right. So I arrived on, let's see, Friday, whatever. I was into Palladium Mall just before 8 p.m. And my second set, the first set was some girl who IUI'd me, but she was like carrying some flowers on her way to meet her boyfriend. Anyway, the second girl I opened, instant date. She actually suggested the instant date. We went up to a park where there was some sort of music party. Got a bit drunk, very flirty, looks pretty on, but didn't kiss her because her boyfriend showed up after 2 hours. But you know, she's still chatting to me. Who knows, something might happen. Then while I was with them, I decided to just pawn them off a little bit because there's some other girls there. So I opened, let's say, Turkish girl who chatted for a bit, but basically it was a no. Opened 2 English girls who came and sat with us for a bit, and I just basically let her get away from me. I didn't care. And then right at the end, I opened what was my 5th set of the day, some 2 set. I was with some dude, and I made out with this girl, nearly fucked her, and then she got a call from her boyfriend and disappeared. I know it was kind of drunk and I don't really remember a lot of it, right? But anyway, that was like night 1. Yesterday, say I had 2 quick blowouts. I had a date at 2 p.m. with a girl I'd met last time I was here. That was just a little half-hour date before our bus. And kiss close, yeah, seems quite good. Who knows, she's still chatting to me. But yeah, I got a kiss close on a little mini first coffee date. Then I went right out. I got blown out twice by 2 girls on the main street. And then on my 3rd set, instant date, some young Ukrainian girl who's new in town. We ended up spending about 4 hours on the instant date, kiss close. She's chatting to me. And then then I was just absolutely fucking knackered because I was like hungover for getting drunk on Friday night. So yeah, and then I woke up this morning, I got a cold. So hi, woohoo. But anyway, what's the point of this? What's the point of what I told you? It's not really preening. I didn't get laid, but I basically did 8 sets and got 3 kiss closes, right? What is my overriding feeling right now? Well, I'm looking out the window and I'm thinking, God, it's hot. I got a cold, but fuck, I want to be on the streets. I want to be fucking girls. Right? I want more. I want more. Right? So I think you have to get it into your thick skulls. Like I'm still trying to get into my thick skull. That you're never going to reach this position, I think, where you're getting enough. Where you just think, yep, I'm fucking enough birds. I no longer feel this day game hunger. I mean, if you have managed to get that, either A, you're very lucky, or B, you're just deluded, right? Probably you just have to look at your success rate and think, does your success rate actually bear out your feeling of your own abundance? So anyway, what this means is I'm having to actually tell myself today, look, you don't need to go out opening, right? It's Sunday, it's quiet, it's hot, you don't feel very well, you're flying away tomorrow, you've got a bunch of like girls that might meet you for a date tonight. Like, do you really need to just go out for like 2 hours and just start hitting on more girls when you don't feel like it, right? Is that not just going to undercut the vibe of the only when I'm feeling like it? So if you're intermediate and you find you've got this constant hunger of you need to be getting more leads, or I remember, God, who was it who said this to me? It was a couple of weeks ago. Someone said like what one of his friends was like cancelled dates because he wanted to spend more time getting numbers. Right? That's like feeding the more monkey, or what, right? More monkey. I just came up with that. Anyway, so you don't need to open as much as you think, right? Right. Number 2, get more into the habit that you're filtering rather than you're trying to get every girl. Now, day game is not a numbers game, or more correctly, it's a probabilities game. So, there's a certain number of yes, maybe, and no girls out on the street. The yes girls, pretty easy. You just have to find them and not fuck up. The maybe girls, that's where the game's played. You've got to take mild interest and turn it into strong interest. And then no girls, you just have to filter them out. Now, of course, it's not a numbers game because you have to recognize if the girl is yes, maybe, or no, and it's not always easy. You have to then do the right things based on that, and of course you can still fuck up, or you can still do suboptimal game, and right, so there's a whole world of game out there over and above the filtering. And then when it comes to your vibe and your aesthetic and your strategic choices of where you do game, there's also that will actually affect the percentage of yes, maybe, and no. Basic rule is the better you get, the bigger the pool of yes girls, the bigger the pool of maybe girls. So that's all true in that you have control over this process, like a measure of control over this process. But ultimately, any girl you open, it's still like being dealt a hand in poker. Right? It's still like dealing a hand, right? You get your cards, oh shit, 2-7 offsuit, fold, right? Oh god, 3-6 offsuit, fold, right? You're waiting for the ace-king suited, right? For the yes girl, or you're waiting for, I don't know, king-10, right? So get into the habit that you're filtering, and it's not really under your control. I think men generally want to bring the world under their control, and they want to control things that are inherently uncontrollable. And I think game, particularly the highly technical game of kind of stuff I do, it gives the illusion of control. Now, the fact is we don't really control anything. We don't even fully control our own behavior. But because you do control certain things, it gives you the temptation that you can control more, right? So I'll get like emails, some guys sending me text chats where it's obvious that the girl was just in love with her boyfriend, didn't want to come out, but she was friendly, right? And he's like, how can I get this girl? And I'm like, you can't get that girl, right? She's at a certain stage in her life where she can't be got, certainly not by you right now. So don't take too much responsibility on your results. I mean, obviously, if over time your results aren't good, then that's about you. But on any given set, any given day, don't take too much responsibility. Don't get hung up on the girl that seemed to go well and then you fucked it up, or where it seemed to be going amazing and then suddenly she didn't want to give the number. Like, it's not about getting any girl. It's about filtering, and it's about improving your probabilities on the filtering. So I think that often takes a lot of the weight, like the burden off your forebrain of not trying to think you're responsible for everything, right? Because a lot of what I'm trying to tell you here is we're trying to take the pressure off your hindbrain, right? We're trying to take the pressure off your forebrain. We're trying to like not be so hard on ourselves. Okay, number 3, rivalry hurts. Right, there's a healthy rivalry where like your wings or some of the guys on the internet or whatever, you're telling war stories, you're competing, you're trying to learn from each other, you're trying to get one over on each other, and that's just how men are, right? Is they compete with each other and it brings everybody up, right? It's good for you, right? Like, competition forces you to interface with reality, gives you a benchmark, and it forces you to open your eyes and see what's really happening instead of being comfortable in delusion. So rivalry is good, and I have my own rivalries. But it can hurt you. So if your vibe is getting a bit weak, if you're going through a little bit of a lull, a bit of day game revulsion, it's often good to just cancel out those rivalries, just ignore them, right? Like, don't read blogs, don't like watch infields of guys getting like same day layers, you know, don't go on the forums, because that's going to plug you back in to all these different petty rivalries, which at this point in time aren't helping you. So don't feel bad about just switching that shit off, right? It's the equivalent of when a writer just takes his phone off the hook, right, and like shuts his TV so he can focus on the writing. Right? In your day game, often you want to just do that. Just shut the world out, like the day game world. Shut the day game world out entirely, and then it's just you doing your thing. Right? And I've got an earlier podcast on that called the Solo Day Game Mindset. Now, I've been actually quite good at this lately. It's been one of the things I've been working on, is getting better at, well, more comfortable at solo day game. Right? It used to often feel like a bit of an ordeal for me, but I've been enjoying it a lot more lately, and I've got different podcasts on why that is. Okay, number 4, don't track your stats or your winning runs. Right, this one's really hard for a lot of men to do. By all means, track like your first 500 sets on an Excel spreadsheet in whatever detail you see fit. But there'll come a point when you're intermediate where often you want to just try not to think too much about it. So, I mean, I'm a particularly bad offender when it comes to this, is I don't track my stats obsessively. But what I always do is I try and keep a rough estimate of my open to lay ratio, my open to number ratio, my open to kiss close ratio. And this is kind of useful for self-knowledge and diagnostics, but the flip side of that is it hurts your vibe, right? Because what happens is you start changing your behavior on the streets to massage your own stats, right? So if your stats are really good, you know, you might start like not opening girls who in any way seem slightly unapproachable, right? And I mean, your stats don't matter, right? Like, they don't even matter to you. Certainly nobody else gives a fuck. I mean, I suppose some people care about my stats just because I have a public profile and so on, and that a lot of people like to benchmark themselves against me. So, you know, I put my stats up, but really they just don't matter, right? What matters is putting your dick in a hot girl. That's all that really matters. And if it took you 200 sets to get there or it took you 10 sets to get there, it doesn't really matter as long as you got the poker, you know? Like, much more important stat, as it were, well, stat's not the right word, the much more important measure would just be how much are you enjoying your day game to get the results you get, you know, like how happy are you on a very touchy-feely, woolly, grey area sense, just how good do you feel about your day game work to result ratio, right? I mean, if you're enjoying it, you work harder, right? Fine, you're enjoying it, it's no big deal. Okay, also don't track runs, right? I've been like this before. You know, like imagine a footballer who's scored in every game for like 8 matches in a row. How much pressure does he feel on the 9th match about trying to get that goal, right? So how much is that going to make him lose composure when he actually gets a shot? Right, so I've had a certain bunch of runs like that. Say, for example, in 2.5 years, I've been to Belgrade. God, I don't know how many times, probably like 12 times, probably more. Anyway, I've got laid every single time I've gone there. And I'm going there in like tomorrow. Now I'm going to be there 10 days, right? What's the pressure I feel about going there, right? Is next week the holiday where I finally fail to get laid in Belgrade? Right, like I don't want to feel that pressure, right? It's stupid, right? Who cares? Do you care, right? Me telling you that I might not get laid in Belgrade next week and thus break a 2.5 year unbroken streak doesn't matter. No, it doesn't, right? No one gives a fuck. But you can make yourself give a fuck about things that don't matter, and that just puts more pressure onto you, and it's not good for you, right? It suppresses your vibe. Okay. Right. Last little tip here is that just remember everything is transient. As men, we're very tempted to connect everything to the past, present, and future, right? We're tempted to create these like mental matrices and webs in which everything has a place and everything has a particular known connection to everything else, right? It's just our mathematical engineering way of thinking. Now, the streets are transient, right? It's like when Bruce Lee talks about be the water, you know, it's like when Zen Buddhists talk about, you know, like be in the now and just feel the nature and, you know, like watch the sun set and the leaves fall off the trees and, you know, the transient cyclical nature of life and so on, right? Now, I don't want to get too woolly on you. I mean, I'm not an expert in these theories. But one thing that's good for your hindbrain is to realize that like the streets are always there. It's like a river, right? The streets like a fast-moving river. It's been there since the beginning of time. It'll be there forever. It's always going to have hot girls on it. And every now and then you're just going up out to the river and you're going to dip your toe in, right? You're going to have a little bit of a wade in the river. You're going to see if you can catch some fish. Right, but the river is permanent. The river is transient. The river changes from every second, right? I think it was Marcus Aurelius said, right? You never walk through the same river twice. So just accept the transience of the moment, right? Sometimes you go out, loads of hot girls. Sometimes you go out, no hot girls. Sometimes every girl wants to stop and hook. Sometimes no girl wants to stop and hook, you know. Sometimes you have an amazing 10-minute chat where you seem to really connect and there's electricity, but she's got a boyfriend. Or maybe she gives you a number and doesn't reply. Or maybe, you know, it's a pretty boring set. You don't even want to ask for the number, but you ask for it. Turns out she really likes you. You meet her the next day and you fuck her, right? It's so transient. You have to kind of develop this kind of easy come, easy go attitude, which is really hard to do when you spent a couple of years devoting your entire mental resources to getting good at game, right? You make it so that there's so much more riding on it than there needs to be. So again, try to let the weight off and be more transient. I'm just thinking, look, it doesn't matter. I'm just dipping my toe into the water. I'm going to have a little bit of a wade around. I'm going to see if I can catch any fish. And if not, well, it doesn't matter. The river's still there tomorrow. It's still there the next day. It's still there the day after, right? And you never really know which fish are going to come down the river, right? It's transient. So I've got a few more things to go into, but maybe I'll save that for our next podcast because it's slightly changing the topic. Okay, so let's recap. So what I've done in this podcast, I've just tried to give you a kind of meta level approach to your vibe protection. I haven't gone too practical on it. So we've talked a bit about the background, about the 4 key medium to long term factors that you have to get sorted, you have to control, which is the emotional roller coaster, pushing the boulder up the hill, self-starting, and accepting it's all on you. Then I talked very briefly about that this is a multi-year, extremely high energy project that you engaged in to manage these, but ultimately all the girl experiences is a couple of seconds where she runs her eyes up and down you, and the sum total of everything you did, she'll just feel emotionally and make a quick decision. That in your day game journey, there's a kind of learning phase that you go through where you've got this tension between wanting more and only wanting to enjoy your day game, do it when you feel like it. So it's kind of compulsion versus whimsy. And that when you're motivated by compulsion, that's your forebrain brute forcing your way through, and it creates a lot of anguish. And when you feel really good and whimsical, that's your hindbrain just doing all the heavy lifting for you, and it normally feels great. So over time, you want to be able to move towards the latter, where your hindbrain feels great, and you don't have to brute force everything so much. Right, so this is a long-term project. So one of the things you want to be looking for over the long term is ways of releasing this pressure upon yourself, of getting your hindbrain more and more into enjoying it, and your forebrain doesn't need to shackle it so much. So I gave you a bunch of maxims on little things just to work on, little mindsets to, you know, like plant the seeds of, so that your hindbrain feels better about what you're doing. Namely, you don't have to open as much as you think. You're filtering rather than getting every girl. Often you're going to just drop out of your little rivalries. You try not to obsess about your stats and your runs of good fortune. Then just accept the very nature of what we do is very transient and never truly controllable. Okay, so that was my podcast on the theory behind vibe protection. I hope you enjoyed it.